Johnson?
Here.
Kathy Downs is absent, and Mark Eastman is here. Item 3, approve minutes of the 11/1/2022 meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. All in favor? Motion passes. Approve minutes of site reviews from the cemeteries that Linda and Chris went to, which would be Wilson, Eldridge, Page, I think I'm down one.
Yeah, brand new one. It's sort of Fry.
Fry,
Yeah,
okay.
We did all those, and we did the last one yesterday, which was Wilson.
Yep.
And I'm sorry about the notes getting in so late, but essentially it's just what we found out and what we determined needed to be done.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion to approve those minutes?
I will make a motion to approve the site review notes.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Motion passes. Item 4, discussion items. Survey of Old Methodist property line update.
You could ask Luke about that, actually. Hold on.
Okay.
You can do that. I'll go get that information.
That's the one I have never not been to.
That's because it's behind a house up on
And they
River
don't
Road.
like.
They're not wanting company. While we're here, Chris, where is the Wilson Cemetery? How far out?
What's the road? I always forget that road.
Church Road?
No.
No,
Next one back.
no.
The one that comes
Mill?
up.
Russell Hill?
Is it
Russell Hill Road.
Russell?
Russell Hill Road. Right.
Okay.
You go right to the end of the Russell Hill Road and take a left. You go 100 yards maybe down back towards Bucksport, and it's some wooded area there on the right.
On the right, okay.
Go back towards Bucksport. You
Okay.
look for some giant pines, and there's actually a post next to the road that says Wilson Cemetery that's been engraved in, so that's
Okay.
where it is. We went out once and we couldn't find it.
Mhm.
Finally, I went out again and ran into a gentleman. That brings up another subject. Ran into a gentleman and pointed out where it was. This gentleman, by the way, while we're almost ready to get going, works for the town of Bucksport. He was helping his mom out the day I went out to the Wilson Cemetery with him. He couldn't help me enough. Everything we've done, whether it's the library or the cemetery, the town of Bucksport staff has been excellent. They've exceeded my expectations in all ways, and kudos to you and to the managers out there. It's just a great bunch of people to work with, and I'm just stunned with how much they want to cooperate and help out.
Good.
And it's just, I wanted to share that. I'd like to share it with the full council in the future, too.
Okay. Back to,
Luke will reach out to him again. I don't have an update.
Okay.
It hasn't been done to the best of my knowledge.
okay, the next item is veteran graves identification.
I have called Augusta. She said the only records they keep there, according to this lady, who wasn't directly involved in the department, was they keep the veterans cemetery records. But she said you can go on to the national, and I've written it down, some of the national, whatever it is, account, and you can do those searches on there, and you can get the information. So I haven't got good information to include yet at this meeting. But online on Find a Grave, which is an online service, Emmerich Spoon has done an incredible amount of work on that. We're using what's called virtual cemeteries. And I suspect it's quite accurate, and anything's open for discussion as far as accuracy goes. But he has put up virtual cemeteries that relate to veterans, as well as folders for each cemetery that the town manages, as well as the private cemetery. So you can go in and see some of that. You can see the veterans in the virtual cemetery. It's called virtual, that you make up this cemetery and then it loads the veterans in for the cemetery like Oak Hill or whatever. It's a great service. I don't know how accessible it is, but it's there. But I still want to get a better, I'd like to have an official document from the Veterans Administration acknowledging what we're doing and how they might be able to help us. So again, I don't have all the information I'd like to have today, but I'm optimistic that we'll get the information and just continue on. The most startling thing that I saw as far as veterans go is my wife and I visited Brookside the other day, and I'm trying to get back in touch with them because it looked okay. There were 19 flags in there that I could count, 19 in that little cemetery. I thought, wow, this is something that I never realized there would be that many. And there was a flag at Page Cemetery, if you remember.
Yes, there was.
And that was kind of disturbing because it was next to a stone that was down on the ground and perhaps cracked. I don't remember if it was. Do you remember?
I don't remember either, but I remember
It
it
was-
being
But,
down.
yeah, and, to show you the condition, when we got there were flags at the gate that had been there a long time and were just in real bad shape. And I'm not pointing fingers, I just wanted you to know that Page Cemetery needs a lot of work. That's, I guess, for further discussion in the future, but that was difficult because it's right there on 46, and it's really
Very
tough to go
difficult.
by that. But anyways, the veterans, I think we're going to get a good handle on it, just I got to do it, or somebody's got to get going on it, get it taken care of. It would be nice to have a database of all veterans. And then the other part of the veterans question is the future. How do we register veteran graves, and how do we know about veterans' graves in the future? How should we set that up so we have an automated system that says that this gentleman or this lady passed and was a veteran, so that the town knows about it and can make sure that they monitor that or address it, as well as, I'm sure, the American Legion of the Veterans.
Could we make it part of the process of, we said we wanted each one of them to come forward asking for funding,
That's a thought, and ask them to update us on
where they're at
place.
for the previous year?
And yeah, that would be a good idea, too. That's worth looking into.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yep.
But that's it for veterans right now.
Okay. Next item is development of a work plan update.
We had talked about this last meeting, I think, and talked about setting up a schedule, right? Was that the budget was going to be the first item that we were going to try to determine cost of fencing,
Mm-hmm.
and we were going to determine how, well, what would be nice to know is what our expenses are now, too. What we're spending on maintenance, as well as we were going to get some prices on fencing, and then establish a plan. I guess my first question is, what kind of a deadline are we looking at here for budget, as far as time goes?
March.
Everything has to be in by March?
Okay, everything has to be in by the end of February.
Okay.
I have the month of March put together. It goes to the council in April.
Okay, so we've got till the end of February, but that's going to be it, just like that.
And the work plan, my recollection is that once all the surveys were done, that there would be some matrix of prioritization
Okay.
of
Yes, right. I
either
remember
something
that.
across
Yeah.
all cemeteries, or which, do you want to pick a cemetery and
And I believe we voted on that. and
Oak
said
Hill, I
Oak
thought it
was
was.
Oak
the
Hill.
priority.
I think
Yeah.
was
Be the
first.
most visible in the center of town.
if that was where we were going to start, and
That's
then
right.
it's a matter of price estimates for the items that have been identified for that cemetery that are part of it in order to get it.
And that's capital repair.
That's correct.
But do we also enter in, I think my concern too has always been operations or maintenance costs as
Mhm.
well on a yearly basis.
Yeah, and Oak Hill, which traditionally had an outside contractor, which we weren't able to locate another one this year. And I don't know if the future will be easier than the past couple of years have been in that regard or not. But that cemetery takes a good deal of time to do. That's not a small cemetery. And it's,
We
Mhm.
came to the one understanding that it was 18 hours to do that on one, I assume that's including the trimming of the weed whacking, whatever. I don't know if that includes that or not. But it took 2 employees 9 hours to do that.
Mhm.
So, are we talking about 2, 3, or 4 times a year on these maintenance schedules? Is that something that we should suggest to the council? How many times we believe we should be addressing these cemeteries?
Generally, there's the cleanup in the spring, and then I think the other ones were like monthly is how it was done. However, when Oak Hill was done by a contractor, it was done more frequently than that.
Yeah.
You seem to be like every week.
Week,
Yeah.
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 At the height of the
Every week
growing
or,
season.
well, as when we got past the crazy growing season, it went to every 2 weeks, but it was more frequent
I
than
would think it's
monthly.
at least 4 times.
Yeah,
For Oak Hill.
A summer at least.
So we don't have to assume that every cemetery needs to have the same schedule of treatments that do it. Because some of them, as we know, are in shaded areas or in wooded areas, and are not gonna require mowing.
No, Page and, well, no, you may, the town manages Page, right? You do some mowing there, but like,
But we don't know how often they've been going in there. It would be nice to know that, say, was that enough? Page, the grounds on Page seem to be okay. I don't remember anything
what I'll
specific.
get from Public Works is what their current schedule of maintenance is.
okay.
That would be perfect. And then we can assume, but we know that we're gonna address Oak Hill first, and maybe some of the others, depending on what kind of budget the council's willing to give us, I guess.
Well, I think we get some pricing on that fencing, and we
Yeah.
might find that that's a pretty big number in itself, I would think.
That's why we have certain people avoiding
So what's the best way to get those numbers? Is that something you want us to take on, or is?
No, I can have staff research the cost of fencing, and it depends on what kind of fencing you're talking about. We're not talking chain link, we're talking
No, I think we talked about aluminum.
it. Yeah, like Fry
the
Cemetery.
aluminum that looks like wrought iron.
Well, it's the Fry Cemetery.
That was my thought.
Yeah, to stay consistent with
Same
the,
stuff that's out there. Because we were out there the other day, and we remember we remarked that's aluminum. And it was a whole
Right,
bunch of-
yes, and it looked good.
It looked pretty nice. And Fry Cemetery looked pretty nice, too.
Mhm.
Good job.
It's,
Get estimate, I'll just call the fence company, they come and do that.
That's right,
And
they
then we
do.
add demolition.
Well, no, they come and
measured out.
measure it
Yeah.
out and give you an estimate, and
But their services don't include removal of the previous fence and removal of trunks, stumps, and trees and stuff like that.
no, you just have to have it ready for them to do
Right.
whatever you're going to have them do when they come to do it.
Okay.
Right.
Well, should we address that issue right now?
I think it's worth an ask if they, at least remove them.
Yeah. Well, then the trees and stumps.
They probably
Well, the Public Works can remove the fence.
Can that fence be repurposed or sold? I mean, I don't know, is it in bad shape, or does it get destroyed when you remove it? I don't know.
I have no idea on that.
if you're going to remove it with the backhoes.
This could be dead.
Well, it depends on how careful you are, I suppose, but I don't, if we're considering that it all needs to be replaced, I'm thinking its useful life is
Lived.
probably,
I'm just free thinking here, that's all I'm doing.
There are sections that could be reused.
well, if we put a free sign on anything, somebody takes it.
Yeah,
So-
right.
I learned if you put $5 instead, it goes even quicker. But you don't get your $5. but
They'll
that's
throw
all
it
right.
on Craigslist.
Um,
You laugh, we put things on Craigslist.
yeah. So as far as the trees and stuff, who's gonna deal with that? Is it gonna be town crew, or is that gonna be Big J?
It all depends on how big the trees are and how much jeopardy something's in from us.
Linda and I are going to look at
Touching
each other
them.
about that maple. I'm looking at that willow tree, not willow, locust tree up at the corner up there at the far end. I don't know that has any purpose in be there, or is that something that catches your fancy being the next one there?
No.
Okay. So that could go, right? The maple tree I'm going to step out of the maple tree discussion because that's going to cause some problems.
I mean, everybody I've talked to loves that tree there because it's so symmetrical.
Yep. and
But I understand also the problems. But you pull that out of there, and how are you going to level that?
Well, exactly.
that ground
It may be
there.
easier just to keep it
You've
there
got
and
these-
seal that stuff around.
Yeah,
That would be my thought.
Yeah.
I would-
yeah.
But
I'm not cutting that tree down on my watch. I'm just telling you that it,
You can do magic things with cranes.
No, what it would,
it's a well-loved tree. I know that sounds silly.
No, it is. It really is. I mean, it turns beautiful colors in fall, and it's just so seasonal. Plus, it has that wonderful branches that make the weird, eerie sounds when the wind blows. And and people just love it.
Well, we'd have a whole new set of problems if we take it down, you know.
Oh, absolutely, I understand. No, I-
Have a downer, Billy.
I have a long list of trees that people want to come down, and I have another list of trees that we've had to take down because they were in really bad shape that people have been so angry about that.
You know, you haven't seen anything yet.
Well-
When Emerald Ash Borer gets here, it's going to devastate a lot of these places.
It frankly amazes me that the town trucks pull up to that dead tree right across the street from my driveway, and they pick up, after every windstorm, hunks of wood that have smashed down on the sidewalk and in the gutter there, load them up, cart them away. It looks nice and neat
Mhm.
until the next windstorm.
Sure.
And one of the days, these days, that tree's going to come down, and if it comes down, it's going to come down right across McDonald onto my property.
But Linda, is that inside the fence, right?
Yes,
Just
it
inside
is.
the fence,
Yeah,
okay.
oh,
So that
yes.
needs to come out of there, too.
Yes.
And there's another one right next to it as well, isn't there?
Well, there was a stump there that they did
They did take that.
take down. Yes.
So that tree,
considerably.
that tree would need to come down as part of this.
Yeah, anything in the perimeter of the fence.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it just needs to go because it's dropping leaves, branches, and
Yeah.
twigs
Yep.
daily, practically.
Most of those bushes are locust trees.
Okay.
Hmm.
So they will come out anyhow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna step out of this, because you guys live there, I don't. And, you guys can figure out what needs to go, right?
Oh, sure,
What
I
I
can.
say.
Oh, yeah. That's easy.
You can look at one tree.
Fair enough. So, as far as development, you know, budget update discussion, I mean, that kind of,
That's tied into this. We're looking for pricing on these things and the schedule of maintenance for the highway's already doing, the maintenance for, I know that Oak Hill was weekly and then it went to bi-weekly as things got, as the season progressed, back when we had a contractor.
Right. When I was sexton, I always prayed for no rain in July and August. It really made it much easier to take care of Riverview Cemetery when things would turn brown.
oh, sure.
And then, you know, you just had to get ready for the return of the rain in the fall. But it's just, it's a difficult thing to do, is to mow cemeteries. So I really appreciate what the town has done, what they've accomplished there. You're always going to have somebody that's not going to be happy. That's another thing I've learned, to take care of cemeteries. But you do your best.
Yep.
It's not limited to cemeteries.
Is clearing the brush away, just clearing the brush away from some of these cemeteries like
The smaller ones.
Eldridge,
Wilson.
yeah, Wilson, can that be put in to the budget as
Well, would
part
that be a
of
budget, or would
maintenance?
that be a town crew
There would just be an assignment to, that when they're,
when they have time to go hit those
well,
ones?
it would be a beginning or end of season action, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, clear it before the thing starts, and then depending on what the regrowth is, when you put it to bed for the winter, to do the same thing. Just to
And once we see the work
preserve the
plan,
the perimeter, yeah.
once we see what they're doing, we can add these other ones that are obscure, a little bit obscure to them.
You want to talk about Eldridge and Wilson? Is that something you want to talk about?
No, well, I'm curious. I think that, and you said I shouldn't, but I would be even willing to get in there and rake some of these
Oh, at Wilson?
at Wilson and at Eldridge, but because I know there are stones under some of this debris which has been piled up for years, and especially Eldridge.
Well,
But-
can you- Well, I put in the site review what we found at Eldridge, but I can't even remember what I typed right now.
You know, I think there are more stones there, and I am really curious about Wilson. I can't believe there are just two graves there with that plot laid out as large as it is. But you know, it's, I just would like to see the debris, the leaves, the branches and trees out of there, and then we know what we're looking at as far as
Yep.
repair. I mean, until it's cleared out, we don't know.
That's right. The worst one probably was Eldridge.
Mhm.
And here's another item that we need to be thinking about. In 1995, when the group did their project, when Oliver and those folks did theirs, they had release forms that they had the property
Landowners.
owners sign, which, you know, I kept wondering why these cemeteries are listed on our website. What does that mean? Does that make it official that we're in charge of these cemeteries? So I thought about it, and then when I saw all these release forms that had been developed, I thought, well, that makes us in charge of the cemeteries right there. We've admitted that we're gonna do it. So from 1995 on, we've assumed the responsibility of these cemeteries. The Eldridge Cemetery, we just went up there. We didn't have permission to go up there, and I'm not sure how they felt about us being there, but the young man was very kind and showed us where it was. We went over and looked it over. It's just two stones leaning against or on the ground. These trees this size growing up all around it. There's no order there or anything. But at Wilson, there are 4 posts that define pressure treated posts that somebody put down. There's also a stone, looks like a highway marker, you know, when the right of way, when the highway puts up, but it didn't have a little H on the top, but it's there. Perhaps somebody put it there. Allegedly, there's only 2 graves there, and that's what the records indicate.
Right.
And Mrs. Wardwell, Phyllis Wardwell, indicated, according to the records, that she was told, she's now passed, lovely lady, and she was told that they had been disinterred back. But you hear that about Wilson, you hear that about Eldridge, you hear that about all these small cemeteries, Cottle.
Right.
It's hard to say, but what Linda's talking about is at least cleaning the grounds of leaves to see
Yeah.
if we're missing something that's laying there on top of it, especially on Wilson Cemetery. Wilson's in a bunch of big pines, but it's pretty open underneath there, but there have been some big branches come down, but we were able to get in and out of there. Really.
Oh, yeah, it's easy to walk in and out of if you can find it.
And Eldridge, we needed to probably do some work with the landowner to make sure they're.
Where is that one?
You know where the golf club is, obviously.
Okay, yeah.
You, right across from there, there's a road, it's the Hanover Road or something, and it's a road that drives up to this location that folks have a home there. And it's right next to their home, maybe 100 to 200 feet from the house, in amongst some bushes and small
I
trees.
see.
But
Okay.
there's
And
only
it's
that-
on a
Yeah,
hill,
yeah,
Yeah.
and you can see where there is a road that went up to that cemetery
correct,
at
yeah.
one point.
yeah.
I think there may be some stones that have gone over the hill.
Yeah.
But it's really in desperate need of clearing out. And there's no sense in talking about what they need to have done there until it's cleared.
Till it's cleaned up.
Yeah, until it's cleaned. Because we don't know what we're looking at, but they are in bad shape.
I would like to think that we could update our written agreements with the landowners on these things to make sure that we've been solid, because the last one for Eldridge, I think, was Larry Green, when he lived out in that area somewhere, so I'm not sure.
Brown?
Brown
Was that the
lives
name
there
of the
now.
family
I
that
believe
lives
so,
there
yeah.
now, Brown?
Yeah, the young man came out and greeted me and instructed me where to go to see it when I went up and knocked on the door. But your point's well taken. There's not much we can do until we know what we have.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those are the 2 really difficult ones. We already visited we all visited Hueytown and saw that situation. I'm still working on Brookside to try and, I got to contact Mr. Miller again. Somebody mowed Brookside. I didn't know if it was the town crew, because when Linda and I went by there, it was really high earlier this year.
Yeah.
And then my wife and I went out there a couple of weeks ago, just on a lark, thought, well, let's go look at it. And it had been mowed and the flags were up. But again, the perimeter fence at Brookside's pipe, like those, when they use the pipe stuff, and that's falling down
Yeah.
in pretty bad shape. But overall, the cemetery itself is in fairly good shape. It's just that perimeter fence was kind of ugly and rough. So
Yep.
I gotta find out whatever happened to the Dedham, Brookside Association in Dedham. There was one there, and they've had burials as recent as 2007, I think. And they have space in there, but they're not selling anymore. They're sold out. Obviously, there's space in there for families to place
Yep.
family members, so. And I've got to contact Mr. Miller, and then he's directed me to this lady, I can't find her, who has all the records. But I just want to make sure that if we do anything out there, that we should do something out there, or whether somebody calls me and says, well, I'm just worried about the story that Dedham took it over, or was ceded to Dedham in the 1880s. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I was told.
I can't answer that.
I don't want to put money into something that belongs to the town of Dedham.
It still shows up on our GIS maps. I think I did find it there.
Yeah, and it's also listed wrong in our GIS. It's listed as Parker Cemetery.
Wouldn't there be some documentation? Had it been ceded to them?
I'm looking for it. I haven't found it yet. I would think so. But that would be something I guess we could take up with the town
Yeah.
selectmen or something to see if they know anything about it. But it was, when I called, there was a lot of, not confusion, but people pointing to each other and saying, didn't you take care of this? Or who's taking care of that now? And I knew things had deteriorated over the last 10 or 15 years as people pass on. You know.
Sure.
Associations become difficult to maintain.
Yep.
But I think it's important to see if the town of Bucksport is putting any time or effort into that.
Okay.
If that's part of his schedule. Thank you.
All right, the last item is record storage, vendors, etc. Do you have something to add with that, Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to say if we could, some way we could get Mr. Stevens' records into the drive folder.
Okay.
Anything that you've got going with him, so we can set up, if you could set up a folder called vendors or whatever, and any kind of that stuff, so we can have it ongoing and stuff. But
To
that's-
where he'd been and what he...
Yeah, if he
what's
could
done.
give us that, as well as his statements, you
Okay.
know, what we're paying. I think for future use, it would help, and somebody in the next generation, I mean, I don't know, but I know I'll be gone soon. The rest of you young folks will probably be here a lot longer, but that's important, and as well as whatever you can find out from Public Works, if you're willing to divest that information, 'cause I'm not sure that's something you may want to put out there, but if we could just put out there, the Public Works put in 8 hours or 15 hours and 28 hours in this cemetery for the year, that's fine, just to see what we're dealing with, it will really help.
Mhm.
Thank you. That's it from me that I can think of.
All right. Any,
Does you have anything you want?
anything else to add?
Remember we talked about the one stone that we thought that the weed whacker, the weed whacker and possibly the mower, took a chunk out of the stone.
Mhm.
Leslie's daughter was here from Boston. She's right into repairing stones as well. So she tackled it. And it's amazing that you can hardly tell
Oh,
that
nice.
it was damaged. And when she sprayed it with a D2, it's whitening up as well. She did a fantastic job on it. They could attest to that.
Oh, yes, she did. She certainly knew what she was doing and did a remarkable job. I watched her.
Well, and I saw the guy that popped in on our meeting last time. He was at Oak Hill doing stones somewhere back in October, I think it was.
Yes, he was. I haven't seen him there since the weather turned,
Yeah.
cooler. But yes, but now he does just veterans
Right. Right.
and cleans them. I don't think he does any repairing.
Right. I think that's all he did was clean.
No,
He did
said
repair?
No, he said he cleans them and he uses a special,
He uses D2,
yeah.
Yeah.
that Only, and
which Whitney used also, but I watched her mix the whatever she did there and apply it to the stones, and she just fit them back beautifully. It was a jigsaw puzzle for most people, but she's excellent.
But that one stone that was pulverized when the vote came out. It was, and Stevens put that back together. It was really shoddy brick, even though, I mean, they did an awful lot of brickwork. She would like to tackle that, and see if she could make it look better. That's what I believe for her.
That, you know, that's terrific. I'm concerned, I was concerned, I think I shared this with you, about this gentleman coming in on his own, and I appreciate him doing that. It's really kind of him and generous to do it. It'd be nice to know where they're coming, so that we don't need to be putting out that anybody who wants to go in there and do whatever they want can do it. I just really feel nervous about the responsibility of the town maintaining that. Somehow contact us, or maybe we can set up something that says you want to do it before you go in. And I know some people believe in bleach, which is according to the Maine Cemetery Association, that's a real no-no. And I think Mr. Stevens believes in bleach. I don't know that he used any, because I questioned him about it when he came. But that's great if we can manage this volunteer work of folks coming into these cemeteries and helping. But at the same time, we need to be real careful about who's getting in there, who's doing what. And it would be nice to know, are they going to use D2? Perhaps I'll look and see if I can find some standards or something.
I think D2 is absolutely the best way to go. Now, I've also heard that Stevens power washes.
His website says
Yeah, that was the other
Okay, I haven't been on his website. And that is a big no-no.
Right.
Yeah.
I argued with him about it. I told him, I said, well, before you do it, you need to contact us. And he never got back in touch.
We don't want power washing on that limestone. It's going to disintegrate the stuff.
But what I'm trying to do is see if we can organize this so that if somebody says, you know, I'm willing to come in for an hour and a half, we might say, well, go to Molten, or go, would you be willing to go to here because this is a priority or whatever, and see if we can just manage it. And perhaps it'll turn them off. I don't know. Maybe they'll say, you know what, I'm not driving way out to Molten. I'm going to do something here, okay, fine. But I would just like to think that we have some management of people accessing those yards and addressing some of those stones.
Well,
We have no ownership of stones
That's a good
at all.
point. That's-
And so permission it becomes iffy, because if you grant permission, you assume responsibility. You see what I'm
I do, but
saying?
we're also-
I don't think that just anybody ought to be allowed to do, these are not owned by the town. They're not owned by the, people who want to do something good, but there needs to be some organization around who's allowed to do these kind of things in these cemeteries, that they're using the appropriate materials, that it's,
Well, with the
back
town
in the
providing-
day, I can remember having a conversation with a town attorney when I was in another community about the whole idea of the town doing work on stones or having work done, and I can remember him saying, the town doesn't own the stones, the town owns the cemetery, and the stones are the property of
A lot of us.
whoever its family is, left to that. Not that anyone generally does, but that you really needs to be careful about allowing people to do stuff that may not.
We don't have the authority to.
Well, we don't want damage done
no.
by people who may be well-intentioned but not
But
well-trained.
again, I agree with you. That was always the assumption where I was up the river road, which was you lease the lot, but you provide the stone. And that's, you don't buy the lot, you lease it and the rights to it, and then you provide the stone. But, Sue, we just had all these stones broken, but the town assumed the responsibility of repairing them. So it's sort of like you're saying that, but then we turn around and do that. How do
Well,
we
I'm
draw the
saying
line?
that what we're doing isn't necessarily consistent with what our responsibility is. Where there's an ethical responsibility that the stones in these cemeteries, that the cemeteries are well cared for, and that people who are there, veterans in particular, that are honored. And the truth is that for at least the majority of our very old stuff, there isn't anyone family-wise that's going to step in and do these kind of things. Understanding that we don't have a legal responsibility to do it doesn't change the ethical responsibility of honoring our ancestors that are here. But all I'm saying is that while there's a lot to be done, your idea of the fact that if something's going to be done in the cemetery in terms of cleaning the stones, people need to talk to the town before they go
That's my point.
do that, just to make sure that we know who's doing it, who you are, what's your contact information, those kind of things, just in case there's an issue after, or there's, I just think that would be,
So talking to the town means talking to this committee
yes,
would suffice.
the cemetery committee.
And we can-
I mean, wouldn't the cemetery committee be the one that kept a list of people who do this or want to
It would seem
volunteer
to
for
be
this or
appropriate.
all of that?
Mhm.
I think this would be the appropriate location for that kind of a list, shall we say, of people who had asked to do, work in cemeteries or do some of this volunteer cleaning and all this kind of stuff, that we had some sort of a registry that,
So we need some kind of signage or something identifying that we want them to come to us, or,
That's a thought.
when we redo the fencing on Oak Hill, should there be some kind of signage indicating if you're going to do work on the stones, please contact the town office?
well, I think it becomes the information we keep on our website about cemeteries that says,
Yes, that would be more appropriate.
this is
I
the
think.
protocol for, welcome to visit and welcome to do, but,
Don't need a bunch of signs.
No.
but I think that we do need a policy or statement on that sort of governs how we're gonna,
Can I, at this point in time, ask permission for Whitney to repair and clean? Is this appropriate time?
I would think the committee would,
Good place to start?
Yeah, so, is that a motion? Is that what we're doing?
I'll make a motion to permit Whitney to continue the cleaning of Oak Hill Cemetery stones and
Cleaning and repair.
repair, okay?
I'll second that.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
And that, we'll work, I think we can work on, there's criteria out there that cemeteries have got all over the place.
well, I was gonna say, we don't have to reinvent
No,
the
no,
wheel.
no.
We can just go look at some websites.
Before you do this, you have to some even say you've got to have a license or a permit and all that stuff, which is fine, that's what they do. But those are in other places of the country. But also, some will say D2 only, no pressure wash, none of this cannot be allowed, and contact the office before you do it.
Yeah, I would say as long as we approve of the method that they're, and the type of cleaning that they're doing, and it falls within, the guidelines for no damage but this result, then I would think that's what they should provide us.
What would also be nice too, Linda, is a record of what they clean, so that we know which stones are cleaned and when.
Oh,
If they're willing to
absolutely.
do that,
Yes,
that would help us a lot.
absolutely.
By the way, Oak Hill was cleaned in 1990 by a gentleman from Warrington who came down and cleaned all the stones in Oak Hill.
Really?
Showed you how long it's been, the condition they're in now, yeah.
Wow.
He did it volunteer work, which he was doing around, I don't know what he used, but cleaned the stones in Oak Hill. They're all, this photo of them all white, shiny, and lovely. Anyways, yes, I think that's a good discussion. of
Okay.
the future. Feel comfortable with that motion?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I've been trying to find out what happened to the cannons. Some say that the ones that are in Searsport in front of the South Hall are the cannons that came from
Oh, really?
Oak Hill.
Yes.
We get those, right there on Route 1, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's being recorded.
gonna say, we're on TV, Chris. So if they disappear,
I'm sorry.
we'll look at.
But I looked at monument up on Searsport, end of it, and they show a postcard of that monument with the cannons from 1905.
Okay.
So I think that kind of
That's not the case.
shows that theory out.
Mhm.
Unless,
There was an article in, what's the organization, the Maine State or Cemetery Organization?
Maine Old Cemetery Association.
Yes, yes. There was an article online in that, in there last month or something, that on the cannons in Bucksport Cemetery and the cannonballs. And they said that they went to Searsport for some event, but never made their way back to Bucksport as they were supposed to. But I don't know whether you read that or not.
I haven't. I'm gonna have to read that because the new one came out today, yesterday. The new
Okay,
one,
this
and I
was
thought-
the previous
so it's
one.
previous to that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and spread those around to the
Mhm.
rest of the committee. so people have
Yeah.
Access to that.
But I found it interesting because we had discussed it, and I thought, okay, this,
I'll look it up and I'll put it up on the drive.
yeah,
Everybody can read it.
okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Does anybody have anything else?
a pet cemetery. If we have a pet cemetery, would that fall under this community?
That's a
I have no idea.
curveball.
We're all looking at
Probably, however, considering the extensive list of work ahead of this committee for people-related cemeteries, I'm
It'll
not
carry on
sure.
beyond all of us.
I'm not sure that. I'm assuming it's a cemetery is a cemetery, so that would be something that did fall into this. But I'm not sure that the council would consider that a financial responsibility of the town in the same way that it does people's
private
cemetery.
organization.
That would be a private
Okay.
cemetery
There you go.
taken care of by
That's nice.
private people on private property.
A backhoe and you're in business.
Hasn't heard that one before. Guess.
Well, no, I heard, this is the week for it, if I haven't heard it before.
Yeah.
Thank you, Larry.
Because it's only Tuesday, and I've already had 6 or 7 days in the first day and a half, so.
I think there's a demand there, and just thought I'd ask.
Have you ever seen it anywhere else? I mean, outside of a Stephen King movie here?
That's what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, but it is based on a pet cemetery, and I've forgotten the name of the town, but there is one there that, and, you know, that's what Stephen King
I used
based
to get
it
asked that
on.
all the time when I was sexton. Can I bury my pets down here? Not really. We'd rather you didn't. Good people just, they wanted to go with their pet, they wanted their pets to be next to them. That was asked, but I'm gonna say the years, probably 15, 20 times people asked me.
Oh, what?
I said, well, the cemetery doesn't have a policy on that, so the answer is no.
When the person dies, do they just take the dog with them? How does that work?
No. You know, people manage their lots. Am I right, Richard? They manage their lots in different ways.
Okay,
They'll
okay.
do anything they can to make things different, so.
Okay, fair enough. All right, unless there's anything else, item 5?
Richard, have you anything to say on the Pleasant Cemetery?
How are things going out there for you folks, okay?
Pretty good.
Yeah, good.
We're hiring a contractor at the moment.
Are you?
Right.
Oh, Nate's going to do it?
Big,
Yep.
Wow, that's good news.
Wow.
Wonder if you take on Oak.
Who's that?
Nate Gray.
Nick Gray. He does plowing for me in the winter.
Yep.
That's good to hear. Well, we
He
would,
does my lawn.
200?
300.
300, yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna guess it's probably, what, 20 hours in there? Every time you do it?
No.
16 hours, 2 days? No?
That's a good size
We do
cemetery.
it, we do a lot of it for 0-ton mowers,
Yeah,
big mowers.
yeah. They move fast with those.
And you're on the hill there, though.
Yeah, right. That's a little tricky.
So there's the possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I see him, I'll ask him if he's interested in Oak Hill. All right, I mean, unless there's anything else, item 5 is, I take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All in favor?
And our next meeting is,
Next meeting is January 3rd, 2023 at 11. We don't really have committees, does that work? Does that matter?
not unless you're planning on getting onto the cemetery committee.
I don't see anybody else going to get on, so.
No, the council committees won't be assigned until that following week, but
That's fine, if you're fine.
this committee is comprised primarily of non-council members, and I didn't, current Councilor Downs indicate that she would continue to work.
I didn't
on
get in one way or the other, I don't
She
know.
was not sure. I
Okay.
mean, I sort of built it up and lied at the last meeting. She was excited, but she wasn't. I'm not sure.
I thought she planned on staying on this one.
I hope so.
Well, we can ask her again. I mean, it certainly would be good if she wanted
Yes,
to.
that was my assumption, but I shouldn't make
Well,
assumptions.
nothing else, Mr. Chairman. Is this going to be your last meeting, perhaps?
No, I'll stay with it.
Okay, we've been doing a great job, and I really appreciate it, and I hope you plan on staying.
No, I will, because I've had the flexibility
Okay.
that a lot of the others don't.
Good to know.
All right, we'll adjourn.